Hello. This is 5.5 pounds of clay. I'm going to be throwing a bowl and making a few marks. I think process is important. Being with the bowl and not thinking about being done with the bowl. Take your time. Breathe in. Breathe out. Find your own rhythms. In art, you need to let the medium respond to you. Don't always have full control over it. Otherwise, there's no relationship, there's no dialogue, there's no process, just product. It's important to move slower than the wheel is spinning if you want even walls. If your wheel is spinning at a medium speed, move your hands at a very slow speed. I'm opening up my floor with a curved bottom, compressing. I always think about moving slower and slower and slower as I'm making my move. I'm going to collar this in. Compress the top. Gather. Letting off pressure as I come to the top. I'm digging in at the bottom. And then I'm gradually letting off pressure, letting off, letting off, letting off. Collar. A lot of clay up at the top here, so it can stretch out for me without warping. I'm going to gather with my sponge. Very slowly, firmly, in control. Coming up the pot. Letting off, letting off, letting off. And head back down to the bottom. I'll do one more pull with my sponge. I'm gathering. Careful not to thin out that bottom too much because that tends to be a problem area when you spread out your bowl. So you get a little dip there where it goes from thick to thin. So I consciously let off pressure as I pass through that area. I'm going to switch to my fingertips because I can handle this amount of clay with my tips of my fingers. So I'm letting off right through here. And now I'm going to pull. I'm aiming upward in the cylinder. I don't want to go out too wide at this point because I like to throw a little bit more thin bowls. And with that, if I spread this thing out too far in the beginning, then I'm going to have trouble with it not collapsing. I'm gathering. Very gently pulling through this area. Now I'm digging in a little bit more aggressively and very slow. Overlap your throwing ring. and letting off, gently following through. I'm going to do one more pull. I'm going to start above that little problem area that I talked about. And maybe on the inside I'll just push out very gently and slowly to start establishing my curve. And now I'm going to start pulling very slowly with my fingertips. You can see my inside fingers pushing out. And gently letting off pressure, letting off, letting off, letting off. And following through. Take out the water. I like to compress the walls a little bit. There's a less of a warpage factor if you just compress your walls at this stage. I'm going to take the green rib, curved, gently start pushing out, and on the outside I'm curving the yellow rib to meet that outside contour, and very slowly working up the pot and compressing. I am pushing it out, but more importantly I'm compressing those clay particles together. I'm going to fold this over here from the inside and start to very slowly slide down. I'm also tilting the rib forward as I go in the pot. So I'm starting like this, pushing it over, coming down and tilting it into it so it fits that shape nicely. I'm going to fold this over a little bit, start moving down slowly, tilting it inward and forward. When I get to this bottom, I'm just going to bump this out a little bit, and I'll start riding up the pot slowly. And you can fold this over. You don't really need water with the nice mud tools from Michael Sherrill. The rib slides pretty well on its own. I like the green rib. Got a little bit of flexibility, but very stiff as well. Nice curve. And I'm going to drop this down a little bit more. Trying to establish a little bit more volume inside the bowl, a little bit more breath. And as I get closer to refining the curve, I tend to hold the tool just a little bit more gently, letting it slide and glide down the pot, refining that unbroken curve that you're going for, possibly following through to the very center, and do one more little pass. A little bit of junk down there. I'm going to take that out, and I'll go back to the rib and just finish that off. I like to have a nice consistent skin on the bowl, so I'll just work my way down again very gently, right to the very center. Lift up. Have a little microfiber that I'm going to drape over the rim. Gently compress. Go back to my rib. There's a little bit of a hard transition right here, so I'm going to smooth that out. There we go. Alright, so we could leave it like this. When I was in Santa Fe, I saw a workshop with Don Wright, and he had a very symmetrical platter going, and talked about the energy and how it was contained within the bowl. And as soon as he made a little flick, a little mark on the rim, it had the energy had a place to release and come back in the pot. So it was more connected to connected. So I like that. I like that idea of making an entry point into the bowl through mark making. So my style of mark making tends to be simple. I like odd numbers. Woohoo! And yeah, I try to be a little bit intuitive and a little bit methodical at the same time. So I'm going to use the edge of this rib here. And lately I've been doing just one little mark here just to push out. I'm going to gently push out and slide it up, follow through. Here's my mark. And maybe I'll do one other little spot to highlight this. And I'm going to just wet my pinky and gently push from the outside, rotating it in a circle-like fashion, and just bumping this out a little bit. Alan Watts talked about finding the balance between the man-made and nature, and how do we do that? How do we go beyond beauty of what nature has to offer? And he gives a exercise for taking 3 sound rocks and then trying to place them as if a human had not placed them there, and as if there was some sort of intelligence as well behind it. Trying to find that balance between the two. It's very difficult, and I think it's a good exercise to help with mark making and making choices with ceramics.